People-first organizations will win in the future of work.
Your only real asset is your people.
We all want purpose-driven work.
HR-led organization is the
I'm
future.
sorry, but leaders don't lead empty desks and empty shop floors.
Welcome to the People Strategy Leaders Show. I'm your host, Sri Chalapa, founder and president of Engagedly, and a serial entrepreneur in technology, films, and music. This is where we talk to people leaders, business strategists, and organizational savants about leading in the time of change. What is working, what is not working, and more importantly, what we should be thinking about. Stick around to the end of the show. We will reveal how you can be our next guest. And now, let's engage. Hi, this is Sri Chalapa again with People Strategy Leaders Podcast. And today I have the privilege joining from Melbourne, Australia, Karen Ferris. Karen is a director at KarenFerris.com and Makanta Consulting. Karen is a self-professed service management and organizational change management rebel with a cause, acclaimed internationally as an author and speaker with industry acknowledgement of her reputation. As a thought leader, she provides both strategic and practical advice and insights to her audiences. Her ability to share her experience and knowledge ensures that everyone is empowered to make a difference within their organization. She's an author of 5 books on leadership, change, and workforce resilience. In 2014, ITSMF Australia bestowed her with Lifetime Achievement Award for her contribution to the industry. She has contributed to many service management publications. For the last 5 years, she has been voted one of the top 25 thought leaders in service management by HDI in 2017. The Business Relationship Management Institute presented her with a Global Excellence Award, and in 2018, CMI Victoria awarded her with a Rebel Award for the person breaking all the rules to make things better for all. Well, welcome to the show, Karen. It's a privilege and honor to have you on my show.
Thanks, Ray. I'm happy to be here. Thanks
Absolutely.
for inviting me.
Great. And, you know, it's not every day I talk to people across the globe, really, especially from Australia. So I really appreciate you making the time to talk to me about it. You know, I've been a big follower of your posts and your thought leadership in the space. And one thing that really stood out for me, you know, we all talk about the future of work and how we are all trying to get ready for it. But you have a big red flag in that you're saying that the future of leadership is not ready for it. Why do you say that?
Yeah, so I think the future of work is hybrid, regardless of so many organizations pushing back and saying no. It's what employees are asking for. They've had two and a half years, 3 years nearly of flexibility, and they want to continue with that flexibility and autonomy. And there's 2 indicators for me that leaders, and I use that word loosely,
Right.
Leaders are not ready. In 2020, in March 2020, the global demand for employee surveillance software went up by 80% compared to the same time the previous year. And this is data from a company called Top 10 VPN. So listeners, people watching can Google Top 10 VPN. And I thought that was a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, we've suddenly got people working from home. Our so-called leaders have suddenly panicked. I can't see them anymore. Therefore, I need to put surveillance software out there to see where they are and what they're doing, which was crazy, because you and I know, and the people listening to this, watching this podcast know, that even if you saw someone in an office sitting at a desk at a computer, you didn't know if they were working or not, if they were being productive or not. But the mindset somehow shifted to say, now I can't see them. I have to monitor what they're doing to prove in my mind that they're actually working. And as I say, I thought that was a knee-jerk reaction at the start of 2020. But this, I'll just show you, hopefully you can see, this is the graph, this is the data from Top 10 VPN. And this is April this year, and it's just going up. So that's the demand for surveillance software. Went up 80% in March 2020, 65% in April 2020, 78% in January 2022. So the demand is still going up. What is going on? Why do so-called leaders think they need to monitor keyboard strokes, which is what they're doing?
Right.
So,
I think it poses a fundamental question, right? Trust, which I'm sure you're going to talk about.
absolutely, it is trust, but it's also leaders being able to or recognize that it's about outcomes, not hours at a desk. It's about measuring the right things, and we're not measuring the right things. If we're surveilling people for, why were you away? Why did your status go to away between 10 and 11 yesterday morning? What does that matter? I mean, someone could be, putting effort into writing a document or a business plan or wherever it might be, and they're not hitting enter. And what's happened is, and I've had some very clever senior employees tell me what they're doing now. So they're putting weights onto the keyboard so that it simulates that they're always on. So their status on Teams or whatever collaboration platforms they're using is
Right.
showing that they're always there. And of course, employers are monitoring whatever the employee is doing in terms of their ability to be always on. And so employees are coming up with some very clever ways of keeping that status to always on. And I've seen, and you can look on YouTube, desk fans that are attached to the mouse that move it when they go away. I mean, it's just crazy stuff going on. And I laugh about it because there's some very ingenious. I've seen an employee that's attached the mouse to a toy train going around a track. So when they go away, the mouse is still moving. So and you can laugh about it, but it's a very sad situation that that's what's happened. The second indicator that I know leaders aren't ready for the hybrid work is the demand for employees to go back to the workplace. Now, if the pandemic had been 2 months, we'd be in a very different situation than we are now.
Right.
We had 2 years of people all of a sudden having to work from home or work remotely. Not everybody, of course, but a large proportion of the workforce. And that gave employees time to reflect on what they want. And they're saying loud and clear now, the research is overwhelming. They want that flexibility to work when they want, where they want, how they want, and they want the autonomy that goes with that. But there's many organizations now that are saying, okay, we believe the pandemic's over. There's another debate. We want you back in the office. And I'm like, why? But there's no reason to go back into the office. You've given people autonomy and flexibility. Why not continue to do that? And I think that's because we have organizations and the leaders in organizations who go, oh, this is just too hard. We're going to have to rethink our model, our operating model. And now let's just go back to the way it was 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, and it'll all be fine. Well, it won't. We know, I'm sure everybody who's listening and watching this has heard the term, the Great Resignation.
Right.
Where employees are just, they've proved that they can work for anyone around the world. I'm in Melbourne, as you said, Sri. I could be working for a company in Singapore or San Francisco or wherever, because we proved that I can work remotely. I don't need to be in an office. So now employees have such a choice of employer, and they're in the driving seat. So that's part of what's driven the Great Resignation, is that realization that an employee is saying, I deserve better, I deserve more. So they're ready to walk. So unless organizations and leaders in those organizations wake up to that fact, they're just not going to retain the talent that they need to survive.
Yeah, thanks for that, Karen. It's totally right. I mean, people have learned how to work remotely, but I think there's this big cohort, and I would call them to some extent, the dinosaurs of an era where the management practice of managing was managing by walking around. And managing by walking around is great. I have no problem with that. I used to do that when I was running projects back at EY and Capgemini. We had teams. We would walk around and I would talk to my team. It worked great. But once we started going virtual, a long time ago with teams working in India and Europe and all of that. So we were getting used to it, and we had to change our management practices with better better notes, being able to structure your time effectively, doing a lot of these type of calls, coming to the meetings well prepared, so you're not wasting time on those meetings, because the next time you'll be able to meet is 1 or 2 days later. You can't just go back to your desk and come back in 30 minutes to have that discussion again. So it requires better preparation, better structure, better planning. And leadership and the management have forgotten, or maybe not, some of them, not all of them, obviously, some of them have forgotten on how to structure their work and their processes better to be able to manage a virtual world of work. And that's true for a lot of global companies who have teams all over the world, but many of the companies that don't have that, or at least the teams don't have that, they'll have to learn new management practices to do that. The second thing, to your first point, actually, is comes down to trust. If you think your people are not working effectively at their from their home or virtually, wherever they are, they could be on a beach in Florida for all I care, then you have to question, have you set, as a manager, the right outcomes and expectations for that employee or for that team member? And secondly, have they bought into it? Or did you just shove something down their throat and say, this is what you're going to do, and they have not fully bought into it? So that goes back to, again, management practice, which is management to the outcomes and using good processes. Otherwise, you're scrambling minute by minute, hour by hour, and that doesn't lend itself very well to hybrid or a virtual work environment. So I don't know, what are your thoughts about my assessment of this problem in leadership?
I think absolutely spot on. I mean, if I'm an employee and I know that a manager, let's say, is monitoring my keyboard strokes, that just screams at me, I do not trust you.
Right. And
that is a terrible indictment, that we have so-called leaders saying, I do not trust you. Where does that leave the employee? I am not going to stay in working for an organization where I feel that you're saying I don't trust you. And we need to have leaders that, as you said, Shri, set clear expectations. This is what I want you to deliver, when I need it, how you do it, and how many hours you spend doing it is pretty much irrelevant. I just need this outcome by this date, and being absolutely clear on those expectations, and then letting an employee with the empowerment and the autonomy to do whatever's needed as they see fit. And that is so, I've worked with organizations where I've talked to a leadership team, a senior leadership team, about empowerment of their employees and autonomy. And I can see they're like, oh, this is going to be anarchy. I tell them what to do, and I don't. They're micromanagers, and suddenly they're going, oh, I need to be hands off. But when I talk to these leaders and say, okay, this is a new way of working for you. How about we start small? Find an activity that's low risk, or a task, I should say, that's low risk, and work with one of your employees to empower them to undertake that task as they see fit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you get out of the way. Just get out of the way and let them get on with it. And I assure you, magic will happen. And it does. Because all of a sudden, the leader has more time.
Right.
Because they're not micromanaging anymore. The employee is like, yes, I feel like I've got a sense of purpose and I'm valued because you've given me a task, but you're not directing me how to do it each step of the way. You've just let me do it as I feel best to achieve that outcome. And it's amazing what happens, but we have organizations that are just still command and control leadership. And the thing is, and Jacob Morgan wrote about this in his recent book, that we put people into leadership, so leading people leadership roles in the late 20s, early 30s. The first leadership development they get is in their early 40s. So in some situations, we've had people put into leadership positions with no development, no guidance, no support for over a decade. So where are they getting their guidance from? They're getting their guidance from the leader that went before them, who was in the same situation. The leader that went before them, who was command and control, hierarchy, and then you expecting them to undo that learning that's been embedded for like over a decade. So we're not giving our leaders the support and mentorship and coaching that they need. So that absolutely needs to change, and we need people. We also need leaders. I mean, that's been the situation well before hybrid working and the situation where we're in now. So it's just amplified, if you like, that we have leaders now trying to lead a hybrid team and going, I don't know how to do this. I can't see people. Like, I don't know how to adapt my way of working to this new work situation. And which is why, as we've mentioned earlier, so many organizations are demanding people to go back into the office. Let's just go back to the way it was because it's so easier. Well, right. That's okay as an employer, but your employees don't want that. You've got to have to change. And it's the biggest opportunity that's ever been presented, I think, to organizations.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great opportunity because then you can hire the best talent anywhere. And you don't have to pay San Francisco prices or Sydney prices or Singapore prices. Or, you can, I was talking to one of our earlier podcasts with the startup who set up a startup in a small town in India, which was a tier 3 town. It's not even a tier 2 town. And they were able to do that effectively because they decided they were going to work in a hybrid work environment from the get-go. This is pre-COVID. And then during COVID, they didn't miss a beat. And that was, some people have figured out early on. Some people are still trying to figure that out. My main concern with, remote work, to be honest, and I suffer from that sometimes myself, is the loneliness part, right? Or the psychological impact of working from home all day and not having that change of environment, not having that camaraderie at work. Sometimes, and by the way, going back to work is not necessarily more productive. It's actually could be a lot less productive because you start having chit chats and start having, sidebar conversations. which can be serendipitously good for collaboration, but a lot of times from an
Mhm.
individual productivity perspective, it makes it has a negative impact.
Mm.
So, how do you balance that? Because, I do think there is something to be said about camaraderie at workplace and building friendships and
Yeah,
having that sense of community and having those laughters and going for long hour-long lunches once in a while.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, there are reasons to go back to a place of work, whether we call it the office or a hub or whatever it might be. And I wrote an article not so long ago. I said there's 5 reasons to return to the office. Firstly, preference, that I might want to go to the office. I might not be in a situation where I have a working environment that's conducive to working remotely. I mean, I'm lucky I have a purpose-built office in my house. Many people don't, so the preference is to go back. The preference could also be that I want that connection with other employees, that loneliness that you've said. So, choose that. And I think the driver should not be the CEO or the C-suite. The driver to decide whether you work from an office or remotely should be the team, where the team says, you know what, we would be far more productive in this particular task if we got together face to face, physically together, if that's possible. So do it. If that's the case, if that's the decision that we'd be more productive, or we'd have a higher sense of purpose, or we'd be far more participative. Those are the reasons why you should, then co-locate. Otherwise, and I always say the bottom line is it worth the commute?
Especially not in Bangalore or or San Francisco or LA, cities like those.
But is it worth? Yeah, I mean, is it worth me, even
Yeah.
in Melbourne? Is it worth me getting on a train
Right.
for 40 minutes or whatever to get into the central business district, to go into the office?
Yeah.
If I'm just sitting in the office 9 to 5 in a cubicle doing what I could have done from home, then it's not worth the commute. I mean, it's like I could get 2 hours back in my day by not doing the commute.
And especially the commute we used to have, right? Be in the office at 8:30, which is the standard US timing is 8 to 8:30,
Mhm.
and then you leave right around 5:30. So you're basically hitting peak on both sides of the traffic. So it's actually a double whammy because you lose an hour in traffic or more in some cities,
Mhm.
both ways. That's almost 2.5, 3 hours of lost time in some cases.
Mhm.
And I'm not exaggerating. This is absolutely a fact for many cities that I've been in and worked at. In St. Louis, obviously, our traffic is not that bad, and I'm 20 minutes away from my office, and I still come to work most days because
Mhm.
I like coming to work, even though most of my team isn't at work. I didn't demand people to come into work, and we get together once every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and that's perfectly fine. For some,
Mhm.
for some collaborative brainstorming activities where I need a whiteboard, I feel like I need to walk around and wave my hands,
Mhm.
and they need to wave out their hands, and then we gotta
Mhm.
continue walking together to the lunch, and we're still talking through things. I feel
Mhm.
like those are the times I need people to be coming to the office. I don't need my sales team to come and chit chat and hang out. Let them. They need to go and
Mhm.
sell. I want my marketing people to do their design, do their blogs, do their social media activities, and
Mhm.
coming to the office on a daily basis is going to affect their productivity in many cases. But once in a while, I think it makes sense. So, but I know you're absolutely 100% right. It needs to be task based or collaboration based, and it needs to be team driven, like you said, and not a CEO or a president or a VP telling you have to come into the office regardless of whatever your work is. And in the worst case, in the first example you mentioned about surveillance, which makes which is really bad practice, because that just shows you just don't have first of all, you don't have trust, like you said, and second of all, you have not set clear expectations of what's expected as an outcome. Your outcome is not 8 hours a day. Your outcome is some KPIs or some productivity metric that you have clearly defined. And if you are managing hour by hour, minute by minute, then you've not set good outcomes. Maybe you need to go back to management school and get some training and mentorship, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, any
and that's
last?
what we're not doing.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
We're not giving our people leaders or people we put in that position the education, the support, the coaching, the mentoring to be good leaders. Now, I don't think we talk about bad bosses, and I don't think bad bosses are bad people. They just haven't had the support to be better at what they've been asked to do, and that's to lead people. I talked earlier about empowering employees, just giving them a clear outcome to achieve and then get out the way. And there are so many leaders, and I'm using air quotes, leaders that just don't know how to do that. And it's not that they don't want to, they just don't know how to do that. They're so hands-on. They're still in that, I know best how to do this task, and therefore I will micromanage you to do what I'm asking you as I would do it.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? That's not best use of your time. They don't know how to, they're subject to what we talk about in hybrid working now, proximity bias, where I favor the person I can see in the office over the person that's on a Zoom call or working remotely. And most leaders aren't even aware that they have that bias. It's an unconscious bias that I will give a task to the person who's sitting in the office with me over the person who's on the Zoom call. And that person on the Zoom call might be far more equipped and experienced to undertake the task that I'm asking. But I have this bias.
Yeah.
And unless leaders are aware of that bias, then it's not good. People won't feel included. People will feel excluded because of that.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point about inclusivity in the workplace. And now we have in the DEI component, we have another component of hybrid versus virtual versus in person. So last question, we are about to wrap up on time here. So what are the 2 or 3 things managers who want to prepare for this, who are not prepared for this hybrid work environment, or the management who want to train their managers? What are the 2 or 3 things they should do as the next steps on some of these changes in work environment that we see?
Yeah, I think the organizations as a whole need to invest in leadership development. They should have done that well before we had hybrid working, but even more so now. There are key competencies and capacities that leaders need to adjust to new ways of working. We talked about, empowerment and autonomy. And for many leaders, that's a totally new concept. It sounds crazy when I say that. I hear myself saying it, and I'm thinking, well, isn't that what leadership's all about? Well, it is, but I still see leaders in organizations micromanaging because they don't know how to do it otherwise. And when I work with them and show them how powerful empowerment can be, and autonomy and trust, as I said before, magic happens, both for them and the employee and the team member. So we need to invest in that development of our leaders if we're going to be, ahead of the competition, if we're going to retain our talent and attract talent. And we need to work, leaders need to create or be enabled to create and build an environment of psychological safety. That leaders need to recognize that they don't have to have all of the answers. That's not what they're there to do. They're there to say, I have a team that more than I do probably, let's all come up with the answers. Challenge me. Let's have that friction. Let's have the conversation about, I don't think that's the right direction that we're going in, without any fear of repercussion or reprimand. And I go into many meetings, physically or virtually, in organizations, and the silence from the team is deafening. The only voice in the room is the leader, so-called leader, because nobody wants to challenge them. There's a fear factor. They don't want to say, I don't think that's the right way to go, boss. I don't think that's the right decision. Because they are fear of, losing their job or whatever it might be. And that is, silence isn't golden. Silence is deadly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It's trust.
It absolutely. So trust, better planning, better training, mentorship, and then just acceptance. That's where the world is going, whether you like it or not. The future of work is hybrid, and the future of work is about employee empowerment. It's not going to be command and control. Those are the dinosaurs that eventually they don't know a meteor is going to hit them soon, but that's where it's going. So, well, thanks a lot, Karen. I really, really appreciate your time and your insight, and I hope to see you in person someday, hopefully, either visiting here or there. Where can people reach you and learn more about what you do?
KarenFerris.com. Karen Ferris without any, all one word, KarenFerris.com, or LinkedIn. Just do a search on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Karen Ferris, for being on this podcast with me. Until next time.
Thank you, Shri.
Shri Chalapa here. Thank you so much for listening to the People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you are a successful leader or a people strategist who would like to be on this program, please visit engagedly.com/People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag People Strategy Leaders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter @SriChalapa. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. And thank you to Patrick Ramsey, sound engineer at Kalinga Production Studios, for recording and mixing this show.